Hello everyone, this is Sevil speaking. Today is 1st February of 2024 and this is my last video for TESOL Teaching Practice Certificate. Welcome to this class on Past Perfect Continuous Tense, which is also called Past Perfect Progressive Tense. So the Past Perfect Continuous Tense, which is what I'm going to call it, every time I'm not going to say both names, okay? I'll just say one name. So the past perfect continuous tense is used to talk about something that started in the past and continued in the past. But everything is in the past. You also know that because it has the word past in it. So it's about the past and it has the word continuous in it, which means something continued, right? So that's a big clue. But let's understand it a little bit better by looking at some examples, okay?
Let's look at the timeline. There is now and there is the past. So if I talk about this period from the first X to the second X, I could say I had been during that period. I had been living in Florida, right? During this period. I had been living in Florida. Or I can also use it to describe something that had been happening and then something else happened. For example, I could say I had been living in Florida before I moved to California. So let's say that at this point I moved to California. Okay? But before that, I had been living in Florida. And there is a reason which you will understand as we go forward why we are using that continuous form. Okay? So that's some basic idea. Now let's look at the structure a little bit. So basically, we take the subject, I, you, we, they, he, she, or it. We add had been. And then we take the verb and add ing. We use the continuous form. For example, I had been living in Florida. I had been working hard in Florida. I had been saving a lot of money. Why? Because I was planning to move to California. Okay? So you could use all of these. I had been living. I had been working hard. I had been saving. All right? So this is the past perfect continuous tense. Now, let's look at when we use the past perfect continuous tense. So we can use it to talk about a past activity that had been happening. Okay? Just that. That's one way. For example, we could say it had been snowing all week. We are just saying that this activity that started in the past continued in the past, and which part is the past perfect continuous. Here, it had been snowing all week. Alright? We can use it like that. Now, another way. We can use it to describe an activity in the past that had been happening before another activity happened. So another activity happened and our past perfect continuous activity had been happening. Okay? It had been happening before another activity happened. So let's look at the example. We had been playing golf before it started to rain. So this part had been playing is our past perfect continuous tense. So we had been playing and then it started to rain. started is not past perfect continuous. That's past simple. But this part shows us that this activity had been happening until this one happened. Alright? We can also use this tense to talk about a past activity or action that had been happening, and we want to say the duration or how long it had been happening. For example, they had been working on that project for 6 months, or they had been working on that project since January. Okay? So, had been working, this is our past perfect continuous. And how do we know the duration or how long? With these key words, which are often used with this tense. They had been working on that project for 6 months, or the other word, they had been working on that project since January. They are very common words that you will see being used with this tense. Alright? Next, we can use it to describe activities that had been happening in the past, and then they had some kind of pattern or routine. For example, we had been going to the gym regularly. Okay? So here, maybe people are telling you that because they want to tell you we had been going to the gym regularly before it closed. Now we have to find a new gym. So that's one way to describe some sort of a regular pattern that had been going on in the past. Okay? Are you with me? You got it. Next, we can also use it to describe an activity that had been happening, plus the reason or cause for that. For example, we can connect it to a cause. We could say, she was tired. Why? Because she had been studying all night. So, these had been studying, this is our tense, but we say we are connecting it to cause. She was tired because she had been studying. She was exhausted because she had been studying. She was sleepy because she had been studying. Alright? So sometimes this tense is used to give us a cause, or sometimes it can be a result. And what's really important is not just when to use it, which is what we looked at so far, but also when not to use it. So, as in many of our continuous verbs, we cannot use some stative verbs with these tense. With some continuous tenses, you cannot use any of these stative verbs, or only in a particular way. In this case, we can't use some of them or most of them with this tense. Now, what is a stative verb? Remember, in English, there are two kinds of verbs. They are the action verbs like run, eat, jump, and there are the stative verbs which describe a state or a condition. For example, they could be mental state, I believe, I know, I understand, or emotional states like I love, I hate, I like, I dislike. So these are examples of stative verbs, and you will see a long list in any grammar book, or you can check online. So we should not be using these verbs in the past perfect continuous tense. Alright? So this is when to use the tense and also when to not use it. Now let's look at the structure of the past perfect continuous tense. So I have divided the board into 3 parts for a positive sentence, a negative sentence, and a question. So let's start with the first one. In a positive sentence, what we basically do is we take the subject plus had been plus the verb and ing. Let's look at an example. So we take the subject. Subject could be one of these: I, you, we, they, he, she, or it. And then we add had been. Then we add the verb, in this case work, plus ing. Alright? So say it after me. I had been working. You had been working. We had been working. They had been working. He had been working. She had been working. And it had been working. Okay? Good. So you just use this tense. Good for you. Next, let's look at what happens when we want to make a negative sentence. Basically, we are adding the word not. This is the only change here. So we could say, I had not been working. That's completely correct. But it's a little more formal. Alright? So in regular conversation, we would probably say, I hadn't been working. Hadn't is the contraction or the short form of the two words. Had plus not. So basically, we cancelled the O, we added an apostrophe, and we shortened it. Okay? So, I hadn't been working, you hadn't been working, we hadn't been working. The same thing, they hadn't been working, he hadn't been working, she hadn't been working, it hadn't been working. It meaning maybe the computer or the phone or something else. Alright? Next, how do we form a question? Well, we have to change the order around a little bit. So we start with had, and then the subject, and then been, plus the verb, plus ing. So we could say, had you been working at that time? Had they been working? Had she been working? Okay, so just change the order, alright? Instead of had been, we have to say had plus the subject and then been. Okay, so also remember you can add question words. So if you need to add a question word before that, then keep this same structure and just put the question word first. For example, you could say, where had you been working? Where had you been working? How long had you been working? Alright? So if you are going to use one of those question words, put it just before and then continue with the same structure. Alright? And that's basically how you form sentences and questions in the past perfect continuous tense.
Alright, that's all for today. And thanks for watching me. Have a great day. Bye.